Jimmy came to me with the suggestion that we should make guitars. With him. The suggestion was that we only make a plastic plate with two pickups, two volume controls, one tone control, a changeover switch, and the jack socket out. And he got those assemblies from us, ready wired and tested. He made the bodies. He put then the plates onto the bodies, and he now had a Burns wheel guitar ready for sale. The problem then arose, where the hell do you sell a Burns wheel guitar? And he had absolutely no idea about sales or contacts. He only knew one firm here in London, in Denman Street. What's the name of the base? Foot. Yeah. He knew Mr. Foos, as he's called, old Charles, and he used to go and sell the guitars to him. And that was really his business. We were only supplying plates. But before very long, the situation arose where we had more guitars than we had customers for. So it came back onto me. I've been in the music trade for many, many years before he ever came to me. Now, how do we sell it? Well, I knew Rossetti, I knew Booz & Hawkes, I knew Rose Morris. And I said, well, the thing to do is to sell them to a wholesaler. So I made an appointment for him to go and see Roy Morris and the Wolf twins, who were the three directors of Rose Morris at the time. After he went there and saw them by himself, I think. And after he'd seen them, I asked him, well, what do you think of the guitars? He said, well, we don't mind working with you, but we don't want to work with Jimmy Burns. I said, why? Well, he seems to be a little bit shifty in his outlook. And I said, well, as long as his guitars are good, what's it matter? Yes, at that time I was already making amplifiers for Rose Morris. And they said, yes, but we can't quite make up our mind about it. And then we got an offer from Booz & Hawkes and Rossetti jointly. And Rossetti and Booz & Hawkes said they will... No, I beg your pardon, I'm getting muddled. That was after we separated with Jimmy. Yeah. Anyway, we were making the guitars. And Jimmy very soon ran out of money. I mean, his favorite phrase was to cop the lolly. He used to come in on Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock with two guitars, which he had finished at 4 or 3:30, to bring them into me to cop the lolly, because the way we worked it was that I was selling them. So I had to give him the money there and then, because his landlady was very insistent that he paid his weekly bill punctually. So it soon came to the point where we had to find other outlets and we had to find other suppliers. So I went to Germany, to the Frankfurt Fair. Jimmy was sitting in our we had one workshop in the garage and one workshop in one of the rooms in the house. He was sitting there with me till 4:30 in the morning, and at 6 o'clock I had to leave London to catch the ferry. In those days we used to take the ferry plane, you see. I mean, nowadays we go by train. But he was sitting there, and we were testing and trying things out until the very last minute, until we hadn't finished. And I remember that particular year when I first went to Frankfurt, I couldn't afford an exhibition stand, but a cousin of mine was selling caravans. So I made an arrangement with him that in one of the caravans I made an exhibition stand where I had guitars dotted all over the caravan, and I then went into the music hall, the hall that had the music instruments, and whenever I saw anybody who was interested in guitars, I took them back to the caravan and demonstrated. I took a girl with me from Düsseldorf, whom I paid something like 40 marks a day or something, to keep the place clean and keep the instruments dusted, and always when I've been with a customer, because all over the place, she straightened them out again, ready for the next customer. That was a sort of unofficial first year at the Frankfurt Fair, which must now be 17 years ago, because this is my 17th exhibition next February. The official one in their records. Now they didn't know about that first one, so it must have been 18 years or something like that.
And what were the guitars called?
In those days they were Fenton. They were the Burns Wheel. Burns Wheel.
What did they look like? What sort of colorway? Did they have two colorways?
They were the RP1, RP1B, RP1G. RP was what was RP? It was the RP because
an older catalog, an old orange and white catalog.
yeah, well, Roy Plummer helped Jimmy with the design of the extra guitars in the first week, just before he went to Australia. Do you remember what RP1 stood for?
Yeah, Roy Plummer.
I just said I
My
can't
old mate
remember.
Roy Plummer, yeah.
And he suggested it.
This is the gent you should really talk to because he was in charge of the guitar workshop.
Right, I'll go home.
Going back away.
No, you're quite right. It was Roy Plummer, yes. And they were still the same guitars as the one you pointed out to me just now. And you said,
Slightly with a more angular one side, so I think the two horns could have.
yeah, like that. You got an RP1B in there, where one horn is square and one horn is pointed. That was the original Jimmy Burns design, which was based on the. That's it. Where your little picture is there. Yeah.
Nothing's more filled in there. Everything's kind of way there.
Well, what happened, of course, is after the in quotation marks partnership broke up, we didn't want to make exactly the same guitars as Jimmy did. So, although he said to me very grandiosely, well, I'll let you keep the models. You can continue to make the models that we were making. Now, but I'm digressing. The thing was that it soon came to the point that it needed capital, which neither he had nor I had, but I had contacts. I went to Germany and I bought machine heads, fret wire, Jacaranda fingerboards, tailpieces we made ourselves, those trapeze ones. Yeah.
Yes.
We made those over here. Yeah. What did I buy over there in tailpieces? Only the ones.
You bought some of those lyre-shaped tail pieces. Do you remember from Sentimental?
No, not Sentimental. No.
Let's have a look.
So, I've got some
For that, for you.
early
Yeah.
looks like
Oh, in BMG.
yeah, well, in BMG and also this one. That one as well. If you better go so I can find an actual lace. Which one is that?
That is an RP1B.
Lace. That's
Yeah.
that filled in horns on one side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now I think that was the original Burns wheel, RP1B. What I did was to cut this out and make the horn.
That's getting very completely.
Yeah. To make the actual shape of it, I thought in the end that was a bit clumsy.
Yes, true. In visual appearance, it's
I remember taking a body like this with a Chinagraph pencil, marking out on it the actual shape of this, and then make another pattern of it and cut it.
yes, the final one was quite good actually. I squared off one of that with the two horns.
Yeah.
Actually borrowed one years ago. Actually, held on to it.
Well, the Fenton Weill, what's the one with the three pickups? Stereotype.
Stereo master.
Yeah, that was basically that shape, with that horn rounded up and taken round like this, and that made into another horn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as a matter of interest. Old history.
November what? Doesn't say what year. Must be pretty.
Well, he hung on to it actually. It's working Bungo Jerry, the bass player. That was November 71. He was still using it.
Didn't we find an advert the other day, Betty, in a Young Musician or whatever? No, the Musician, a magazine of some sort. We had the front page advert for that.
Ben and Jed Musician.
I think so, yes. Yeah, plus. Yeah. Yeah.
So hang on to those, don't
Yeah, we got one of those somewhere too. I mean, not the guitar. I mean this paper.
That's the dual master, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the one I've got. That's the dual master guitar, isn't it?
Yes.
It's got the square pickups actually, though.
Well, I mean, this was simply because one of these days we decided that these round pickups were getting a little bit old hat, and we spent a bit of money for retooling onto a square pickup.
Which vintage is that? Where does that fit into the scheme?
That was the original. That was the first instrument that was made with a single-sided head, and that was the Fenton model.
That was the Fenton.
It was Burns wheel Fenton model.
That was before all these sort of
Yes,
things that they
yes, long before. In fact, if you look at this, it was a maple fingerboard because it was before we even bought a big stock of Jacaranda fingerboards.
I've got the guitar version as well as the bass version.
Yeah. You're going to open a museum, are you?
Well, it's looking that way. It looks like a museum at home.
I mean, you see the tailpiece on there is trapeze-shaped this way. We then altered it and turned it that way, so that your four slots for the strings were up there. Do you remember this one, Ron?
Yes, yes, yes,
That was so old.
Yeah, it was a very
That was so old. That's the one that we called the Fenton model, and that's the one. Yeah, I know what we did for that. We originally intended to offer this to not Fletcher, Coppock. Coppock. When Coppock were in Old Street, we made this for Coppock because Coppock bought Gaia. But they sold it under Antoria. That name Antoria, they cooked it up themselves. They called anything Antoria, drums and other things. It became their trademark. Well, the situation is that when it came to the split up, I'll just hook that onto it. When it came to the split up between Jimmy and me, and Rose Morris and Rossetti said they would take over the distribution of a guitar under my own name. And I said, you can't call a guitar. I mean, I told Jimmy, if he calls this guitar Burns London, at least you have a double name, and it sounds like something. But I couldn't call mine then Wheel London, because that would have been a bit awkward. So I didn't know what to call it. And what's the name? Look, who used to be the sales manager at Booze and Hawks. Many, many years ago. No, that's not Harley. No, I mean, that was not Harley. I mean. No, he never became president of the association. No, I know who you mean. No, he's not the manager. He was the sales director. I'm talking to the man who worked in the store. He was still at Marble Arch when they were still at Marble Arch. I've forgotten his name now. Anyway, he said to me, "Why don't you take the name of that Fenton model of yours and couple that with your name, call it Fenton Weill?" And it sounded reasonable, and that's what we did. And we called it Fenton Weill. We called the film Fenton Weill, simply because of that.
So these rounded type of the original ones. Now I've seen one. I've got photographs of one. A friend of mine had one. Same as that, but instead of having a rounded deck and a little horn stuck on there.
Look,
Fenton wheel on the head instead of Burns wheel.
Yeah. Well, see, the point is this. I suddenly found myself in the position of having to make guitar bodies, which is something I had never made. Now, I've been playing guitar since I was 13. And even a bit earlier than that, I think. But all I knew about guitar really was what I've been playing myself as a sort of accompaniment to singing. So when I suddenly found myself in a position that I had to make guitars, I had very little knowledge of how to design a body, and I spent a hell of a lot of time simply chopping up bodies, changing the shape, and until something came out as I liked it. You know.
That's the one. It's similar size to it, smaller than one. It's a little horn job on it. Chopping is different. That's got a tremolo bit on it.
That particular tremolo unit we bought in Italy, that was made for us, or did we make this ourselves? On the left. It's like a Fender tremolo. It's like a Fender unit, but we had it.
Very similar to the latest Burns one, but the album's been.
Well, Burns did exactly the same thing as we did. We copied the Fender and this, but as Echo also copied the Fender, and we needed larger quantities than we could make, we eventually bought them from Echo. Same as with the Twister panels with the pickups and
That's
so.
extremely I've got an Echo bass violin bass with the same before those sitting on the side.
Yeah. Well, we, in fact, we designed that
No, that's not one of ours. We never made
a
that.
tailpiece. I think it came from Echo.
Could have had that put on, of course, if they
No, they were made with it. They were made like that.
It's got a little cutaway, and that's. When they had one of those, it had Fenton Weill on the head. Would that be later in the range?
No, it would still be quite an early one. That is a sort of halfway in between that. Oh, isn't that one of the original Horner suggestions?
The Amazon and the
Yeah, but before we actually finalized, on the Amazon and the Apache, we made all sorts of suggestions to Horner, and we made prototypes, samples. And eventually the Amazon and the Zambezi were agreed on because they were the idea of the two-color wood on, was it on the Zambezi or the Amazon?
I've been scanning through my piles of old magazines. You can see anything of interest, man. Ready to. Yeah, I recognise the family resemblance on the film before I even realised it was.
Yeah.
Too much of a coincidence.
Well, I mean, this was something we used to do. We used to make up a sample of something, take it to somebody like Horner and say, how would you like us to make you 100 of those, and you can have the design exclusive, you know. Mm.
No reply from one, however. He said he may go out for more time today, so I'll try and wait.
Yeah, Zambezi was the one that was when veneered.
I missed a chance to go to the second hand shop. I just passed it up. I should have looked at it.
How much they want?
Okay.
Well, you see what they were then. 37.16 and 54.12 is not a bad price, even for those days.
This is about 3-4 years ago. I think we sat in a sip.
Yeah, the thing that, of course, was of importance to us, it enabled us to develop, not to say mass production, but a sort of larger run.
Yeah.
You know, originally we made 3 guitars, 2 guitars, half a dozen guitars. But with these orders from people like Horner and Rose Morris, and Rose Morris took over Jimmy Burns, and that's why we went to Booth and Hawkes and Rossetti. Well, one person who can tell you something about that is Ivar Arbeiter,
Really?
because Ivor Arbeiter took on Jimmy Burns after his collapse, financial collapse. He took him on and gave him a job at their factory. He had, when he was still with Stallers, was Stallers Arbeiter. And he gave him a job for 20 quid or 25 quid a week. Yeah, well, I mean, he got £40,000 from Belgium. He need never have worked again if he would have kept his head. But he went through that £40,000 in less than 2 years. And then he went to Ivor Arbeiter, cap in hand, and Ivor said, right, you can have a job, 20 or 25 pounds a week, and develop a guitar for us. He took to him the same guitar that he brought to me, I told you on the phone, that evening when he came to borrow the money to get married. And he took this guitar, brought this guitar for me to see. He took the same guitar to Arbeiter. And he was supposed to give me £2 per instrument that he made and sold. Ivor Arbeiter, when I put it to him one day, said, I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about it. Jimmy never told me.
Mrs. Will,
What sort of date do you sort of apply any dates to original? Obviously, the original instruments. So, what sort of vintage would that be?
Ron? When did we...
I don't know, I mean, I think it probably be about 1955.
Did they 1955?
That one could be a bit earlier, in fact.
Is it the same family scene that was originally?
What are you trying to say? I mean,
Well,
When the sort of first
when
sort of
the
production was-
Burns Wheel first started actually making guitars, when the day of the split up.
When was that famous night when we were sitting till 4:30 in the morning and I had to catch the ferry at 6?
It must have been 57 or 80.
But when you started, no.
When did we...
When did I have the misfortune to start with you?
Well,
That was
look,
19...
the only
that would have been 1958. And Jimmy was still with me then.
But you see, we didn't meet Jimmy until after we moved to Shepherd's Bush, and we didn't move there until the first
That's right.
during
That's right. We moved to Shepherd's Bush on the 1st of February 1957. And Jimmy came and sat in that room, in that back room, with me halfway through the night, getting the last guitars ready to take to Frankfurt. And I had to drive all the way from Ostend to Frankfurt without having had a night's sleep. It's not the first time I fall asleep on the steering wheel. I know.
It's really hard to feel it was earlier.
No, but earlier than that we made guitars. Yes,
Yeah.
You did?
we made guitars. We had Reynolds Road Workshop and 237.
No, that was after, that was later. I started in 58, didn't I? I think it was 58.
You were still working in the garage.
Yeah,
of course.
yeah. And Jimmy was
Which
like-
is the year that we turned over £33,000 in the garage.
Good year.
No, sorry.
I mean, we had the garage, we still have the garage, you can't get into it now, it's rubbish. But we had the garage with a couple of benches and shelves in there. And eventually we had 8 people working there that year. And in that one year, our actual accounts showed a turnover of £33,000 in the garage. Yeah.
Brilliant. So you were making guitars before Jimmy Burns came on the scene?
No.
Oh, you weren't.
No, that was, we were still working with Jimmy. Yeah. Because the thing is that the first thing we were doing was just making plates with pickups on. And incidentally, we did that also for Rose Morris at one time. They bought a semi-acoustic, the first semi-acoustic body that was imported from Yugoslavia without wiring. And we just made a plate and supplied it to them, and they dropped it into...
And we did a load for Dallas, do you remember? when Dick Sadleir conned,
Ah.
Sadleir conned Roy Plummer into posing for that photograph. When
Yes.
I was with Roy in Charlie Watkins' shop in Balham, and Sadleir came in with his thing, and that hideous little white thing, tuxedo. Ghastly.
Oh.
And he got Roy to sit and play this in the shop. He said, "What do you think of this, Roy?" And Roy was trying to, you know. And sadly, it was slipping
That's it,
photograph.
it was we playing with it as well.
And two weeks later, there was an added melody maker with Roy's photograph, and Roy Plummer reckons this is the greatest guitar ever.
I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry.
Larkin, Ron Larkin.
Ron Larkin, that's on tape.
Ron Larkin. Larkin.
All right.
Yes, that's right.
You obviously got the right side of the bed.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right. I remember how Dick Sadler once told me off for walking straight through into his office, because you don't do things like that. You never know what's there to be seen. He had just covered something up. That was his horror with the two necks on it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the guitar neck and the bass neck on one body. Yes.
I got an offer in mind now.
And that was at the time on the secret list. It was terribly upsetting. Now Dallas is, I must say, Dallas is in the old days. I mean, we supplied a lot of stuff to them. I can't remember when the show, the annual AMI show, was held at the Park Lane. Only 1 year it was held in Park Lane. The first time I ever went there. And I went to see Rose Morris, and I went to see Dallas. And out of that came my membership of the association. Because Roy Morris said that if I'm working for them, I must become a member of the association. He would propose me. I'll give Doug Michel a ring and ask him to look it up. That would give us an idea. And we then made amplifiers for Dallas's, amplifiers for how many cards you got? 4?
I got 4 tunes passed before work. Excuse me, man, I'm just going to get something to smoke.
Well, we need all 4. If,
No, I don't touch cigarettes. Not that it did me any good.
So, 57, and when would the split with Jimmy Burns himself go? That would start dating his early one,
yeah. At a guess, somewhere by about, I think it lasted about 18 months, the so-called partnership.
59.
Yeah. You see, we never had a partnership agreement. We were simply working on a gentleman's agreement. And I've learned out of that you can only have a gentleman's agreement if you deal with gentlemen. Yeah. And I mean, this is something I shall always be grateful to Jimmy for, because he taught me something that's lasted me a long time.
Yes, well, far less than
But I mean, he invited me to meet him in town. I mean, he lived in Buckhurst Hill, right out in the depths of Essex. He invited me to come and meet him at Maurer's coffee house, a sort of a little German restaurant in Greek Street. And we sat down, we had coffee and cake, and he said, well, from Monday onwards I shall make my own guitars. And I said, well, what about all that money that you owe me? He owed me about £250 at the time. Oh, I said, for that you can keep the models, and you can continue to make the models. And if I don't eat something soon, Betty, I shall have a hypo. What you got down there?
You missed your breakfast, did you?
No, I had breakfast. I must eat by the clock. I'm on insulin.
What, when you actually first started producing anything in the musical line, before even...
Well, wait a minute. I can go back a bit further with this. I mean, the first company was formed in 1946. Did you say 56? 46, yeah. Yeah, I was working as a salesman at Selmers. Look, I learned shoemaking in Germany as a trade which one is supposed to be able to carry out under all adverse circumstances. I even had a shoe repair workshop in the Isle of Man in the internment camp at the time. with the leather supplied by the British government, and we charged the customers for the labour involved. But anyway, I was directed into catering work, and I did all sorts of jobs like the London Polytechnic in the restaurant, cooking. And then I was transferred, I mean, again, that went through the Ministry of Labour. I was transferred to Manfield's shoe manufacturers who had shops in London, where I was first a salesman. I worked at their shop in the Strand. I was actively working as a salesman. And I went to an agency, and I said, as a salesman, I'm not very happy there. I know I've made shoes and I repaired shoes, but I'm not happy as a salesman. And she says, well, I know Ben Davis of Selma's. She had obviously got him some staff. And she phoned him up and said, I've got a young man here who was a young man then, who would like to work in with musical instruments. Would you like to see him? I went to see Ben Davis, and Ben Davis and his brother Lou gave me a job as a salesman in Selma's. And that was in 1943, in the middle of the war. At that time, all the Selma staff were at the front or in the RAF or something, and the only two people in the shop was Joe Van Straten, the brother of Alf Van Straten, the impresario, with capital letters. And Joe and I ran the shop between us, with the Davis brothers sort of hovering on the edge in their office. Now, Lou Davis came back one day with an idea. He'd been to America immediately after the end of the war. They had the first NAM convention, and he saw there the Ampeg bass amplification, because he didn't know what they were doing. All he knew is they picked up the bass, stood it on a little saucer-like device, and now boom, 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 it came through the loudspeakers. Yeah. What's the name of this book? Everett? Was it Everett who ran Ampeg? I think it was. Yeah, Everett. Yeah. Now all Lou Davis knew was he picked up and stood it on the saucer. And he says, now can you think of a way of doing this? And I got a bench outside in the store where I had my tools and meters and experimented around to do all sorts of things. And I came to the conclusion eventually that he can't have seen the thing right, because you can't just amplify through the peg. It was called the amp peg because of that, you see. That was how the name of the company came out. And what I found out much later was they had a socket in the saucer and they had a plug in the peg, and you just stood there and connected it up. The microphone was on a little tube of aluminium up in the center of the instrument, which gave me the idea afterwards for the accordion amplification, you see, because the whole point is that if you put a microphone into an enclosed body, you are reducing the feedback problem, and you can turn the volume up much more, so the sound impact on the diaphragm of the microphone is much, much stronger than if you have a microphone standing in front of it. So you get a much more concentrated sound out of it. Anyway, I had this little experimental bench in the back of Selma's. I had a bell push there. I had a bell there. The bell push was in the shop. If somebody came in and wanted to buy a guitar or an accordion, which was my two instruments, they rang the bell. I went in, I dealt with the customer, and I went back out to my experimental thing. Anyway, one day I solved the problem. I realized that it wasn't what they did, and I got a large vibrato pickup which Rothermill were making for the motor trade to listen to loose bearings and loose valves on engines, you see, and you just touched it with a sort of a rod, and you could exactly say where the actual loose bearing was on the engine. See? Yeah, and that was sold for that job at the time for about £4 a piece or something. And I bought a few of those, and I put a rubber knob on the top, and I covered the back with rubber, jammed them up between the fingerboard and the belly with the round bit down onto the belly, and that was what we called the VP1, the vibration pickup 1. But Selmer's, by that time, that was about 45, 46, Selmer's by that time had already had to take back several of their staff who went to the front, and they were obliged under the law to take them back again. So they were starting to get rid of people. I mean, people like Joe Van Sutton and me had to go, and so I started a company of my own. I was living at the time in a place called Westbourne Court, so I called the company Westbourne Sound Equipment, and WSE for short. And I made nothing but bass pickups and accordion pickups, because I used the same principle with a crystal mic inside an accordion, mounted on the reed block, mounted on the reed block, and fully enclosed in sponge rubber. But the mistake I made was that I left my notes on that bench when I left Selmer's, and there were three basic shortcomings in the model that I left in the notes at Selmer's. I had two thin pieces of rubber with a microphone sandwiched in between and a hole in the top where the microphone was left open. The actual outlet from the inside of the belly, you are not giving that away. You can copy it and send it back, but you're not giving that away. You got that, have you?
No, I haven't got that.
Isn't the negative in with it? Of the original, in the tube, I mean. Could be rolled up into that. I must show that photograph to Singh.
That's well worthwhile. We can borrow. It's definitely get it back, don't worry.
It's not in the tube in which it was wrapped up, Betty.
That's the one, Henry. That's the one with Dan Crook.
Yeah, there is.
Dan Cook, that's Dan
Stan Cook.
Stan Cook.
Cook. No, his name was Cook. Maybe I'm getting muddled with his name and
more apt than accurate.
Is there a reproduction of the photograph from the workshop in... Let's have a look, refresh my memory. Wait, I can't see a thing like that. About Jimmy Golding, foreman in the amplifier shop. Stable, in fact. And we sort of had a staircase built into it. And that is how we actually worked from one guitar to the next. They were, yeah, this is the next in construction, and you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 benches there, and everybody was doing his operation on that bench, passed it on to the overhead rail on the next bench, and that went all the way down to the end. You know. Whereas I was sitting in my private office. Yes. What?
It's not true.
Does it say in here when we got married? No, that was in there. Henry Wheel got married in 1954 and spent everything he had on a honeymoon in the Black Forest in Germany.
No, this is not true.
No, we had.
When we got married, we had 6 times 3.
Well, I was just going to tell that. Yeah, 3 guineas.
I
Yeah.
had a job.
Yeah. But I remember that that 3 guineas was in fact booked to go out that Saturday on a standing order. That was the last money in the bank. We came back on the Friday, and that 3 guineas went out on the Saturday. And I tried to stop the payment. It was too late. The bank closed at 12, and they were open on Saturdays in those days. Did you put saccharin in? Thank you. Stirred it?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Where do we send off these cards? Got back. I've been trying to
We've identified the time of burn with the time. When roughly the date is reflected. How long did you pay on making this on that?
Oh, we made the task until 64. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Well, these things are always sort of bound up with premises. And we know we went to Battersea 64, or we left Battersea 64, wasn't it? Yeah. And that's when we stopped making guitars.
It's a shame actually, because those burns guitars are reasonably rarely.
No, it's worth doing
If you count the gold there, it's only about 6 years since they got finished.
Yeah.
A lot of it's a bit, maybe it was potential thing on the reason. Rare, burns wheels, even rarer still. So it's sad, but I can see why. Very fortunately getting that. It came in a Fenton Weill case actually, as well. The burns wheel angular type from the RP1B case. So I got a rare case.
I think we made cases at one time where you could shift the internal fittings to fit particular guitars.
This was making that angular thing.
Mhm. I can see you took the case, you took the guitar, and you went, get rid of it somehow.
Yeah, it's quite a rare instrument. That came from Pat Chapman at Sitco.
Pat who?
Pat Chapman, who was on Sitco. He advertised the melody maker £15. So
You bought it.
I had it, yes.
Photograph is taken at that time.
Relocation.
Nick, would you do me a favor, please? Could you nip down into the cellar and see whether you can see any guitars?
No, I've not been down to the 7.
Is Johnny in yet?
No, he's not. He'll be. I'll study.
Yeah.
Any guitars?
Is the big
Every-
spiders down there, aren't
No, I just don't like the
No, the difficult steps there.
Guitars or guitar parts, anything to do with Fenton
Guitar
Weill.
parts.
There are some machine heads down there
Machine heads, anything to do with guitars.
in Goodman loudspeaker boxes.
They're
What, in the garage?
The common thing you find is machine heads being replaced by Japanese ones, which is
Hmm.
separate.
Well, the machines we have, 993 I think is the number written on the side of the box.
We've got many.
993 left-handed ones and about 36 right-handed ones.
These are many people with double-sided head jobs, or left-handed heads from doing a fibre and doing USB.
They were the ones where the cover on the machine head is sort of round on the top and comes to a point. And they, yeah, parallel type. And they're punched with wheel London. Because at that time we hadn't yet thought of making it a Fenton Weill, you see.
And you obviously produced quite a few models. I think you've obviously given me stacks of stuff here. Different models. It's become more of an interest in the job and trying to trace all the different birds.
Well, what you want to do is to grab Mr. Larkin for 10 minutes and he will tell you the time of any individual guitar quicker than I can.
My furniture is though is to just read them off. What I'm trying to find actually the triple master. That's my favourite one, the triple master.
I haven't got a triple master.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, whatever that's going to be, call it the Sputnik.
That's what it's been asked. That's what we've been asked to make. That's what we've been asked to make.
You know, somewhere we still got 2 of those fiberglass bodies. Those fiberglass guitars.
You still have some somewhere.
Fiberglass.
You do make these as well.
You know what I must show you? Where are those two bodies, Betty? The combination with fiberglass sides and plywood top and bottom. In the garage.
Body there.
Do you still have those bodies?
Two of them. We only made two, and we still got the two. Yeah, and I still got the actual form.
Yeah, I've seen that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand.
Mr. Will, anything you want apart?
I'm sorry you can't have my wife.
You said you want a partner? They're trying to let you. Anything to do with guitar? Do you want a partner?
No, let me tell you.
Let me know.
Let me tell you something about a development that didn't come off in the end, because it came in the time when we were about to. One day, I had the idea of making a guitar. Was it my idea or yours? The one with the fiberglass sides and the plywood top and body.
No, I think that was your idea because we discussed the fiberglass guitar, and then the first thing we tried before the full fiberglass one was the one with the plywood sides and the fiberglass. That was the first one. Hello, Doug. Ron Larkin. Okay. Surely. Yes, indeed. Okay. Fair enough then. Okay.
That's a Jewel Master, isn't it? Yeah. That's a Jewel Master without vibrato. We got another one down there with vibrato.
Well, any instruments like this.
Anyway,
Well,
the idea that I had was to make a body where the top and the bottom were wood, naturally finished. It didn't come off the natural finish in the end, but they were sprayed. Plywood top and bottom, and fiberglass sides. Because what we were doing, we were experimenting with making these fiberglass guitars there, and we found that if a drop of that fiberglass resin dropped on a piece of plywood and set, you could never get it off again. And that's what gave me the idea. And the way we made this is we got a smith to make that. Those frames. Yes, we had a frame made. We had two shapes. One that was one single sided and one that was double sided. And it was just a frame which bolted together in three places. One here, and one there. So you could take the top piece away and the two side pieces away. And we made up that frame. We put a release gel on it, laid it on the plywood. We even went into making our own plywood tops and bottoms in the end, but we laid it on the plywood molded top, which was already slightly rounded. So laid it on it, and then it was laid out with resin and fiberglass matting, and more resin and more fiberglass matting, and laid out like this. The top was folded over, was allowed to set. Was then turned the other way around, resin put on the overlaid matting, and that was then laid on the belly. The belly had already got its F-holes cut into it. When that was set, we took the frame out. We pulled the frame out sideways because we had an overlap top of the plywood. We pulled the frames out, and we now had a body which all we needed to do was to take a router and go around using the actual fiberglass as the guide on the router, like veneer cutting, with a veneer cutting tool, which we still got down there, the veneer cutting tool, rusty, and run the router all the way around it and then finish off the sides. And all we had to do then was to spray the body so that it was sunburst, it was sprayed in sunburst finish. The center of the sunburst was left natural, and it was gradually taken down to dark, quite dark brown, so that the fiberglass and the joint where the fiberglass joined the plywood was not visible. That was simply dark, but you could see the wood on the center. We'd taken over a fiberglass constructor from a firm who was next door to our workshop down Acton Lane. And I remember that one year we were going to America. What year was that, when Uncle was going with us to America? Do you remember that? When we took that organ contract.
I could make it before this.
Yeah, I can see how you worked that out, yes.
60.
Yeah. Well, no, it would be 63 because it was the non-convention always was late in the year, wasn't it? Yeah. So we told this bloke, now you've got 3 weeks to finish that drop off, because he spent 8 months trying to make up this idea. I mean, it was only an idea of mine. I had no idea how to construct fiberglass, how to do any fiberglass construction. We said to him, you've got 8 weeks, 8 weeks, wasn't it? We gave him 3 weeks to finish it off. When we come back from America, we expect to see the body. Because one thing on which all this hinged is that we had a type of... What's that? Let me have a look what it is. Oh, I see, it's a machine
That's all
there.
there is.
Right, the rest are at Emden Road.
I'll tell you what, we found a new bandsaw.
I know it's there, don't you find it? It's there, leave it.
Oh, you know.
We'll bring that up at some time.
He just brought it up.
Has anybody shown?
Tell him to bring it straight down again. And they're still all there.
Yes, it's true, isn't it? I got an Echo violin bass with a bridge very much like that.
Yeah, what bridges did you use?
That one was made by Echo, isn't it?
Which one?
That bridge.
Yeah, but that-
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
the bridge.
And the tailpiece was Echo, wasn't it?
No, the typepiece was German.
Birkhoff? Not Birkhoff.
No,
No,
Birkhoff.
Birk. They had an advert in last year's, they're exhibiting last year at Frankfurt, so they're in the last magazine.
Yeah, that's an Echo bridge.
Birkenfeld. No, Birkenfeld was somebody else. Okay.
Now, what about... That's going to be what?
Well, it's quite amazing, really, because what we normally did with those, is we said, well, the neck needs setting in the exact position. I mean, the neck is obviously quite straight, isn't it? Yeah. You know, there's a truss rod in there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The neck is quite straight, but what you must sometimes adjust in those was the setting, the angle of these. And there's something I learned from Tom Jennings.
I like that bolt on next.
Cigarette- Yeah. Tom Jennings on all those Vox guitars, he used all the cigarette boxes. Just tear off one piece or two pieces of cigarette cardboard and push it either here or there and tighten up the screws again. That's how we did this. You know how this switch works? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it.
But you know how it works, you know,
No, it's
isn't it?
distinctive to you. That is.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's not really a select. Both pickups are wired through a 47K resistor into one outlet, and both pickups work if the switch is in the middle, because both pickups are then on. When you put the switch down this way, you're cutting out the other one, and when you put the switch down that way, you're cutting out that one. So you could select either first or second pickup, or leave it in the middle. But how did we do it with the triple master? I can't remember.
Sorry.
What sort of switching did we use on the triple master? And that's,
We used the arrow switch, didn't we? The arrow.
yeah, but I mean, how could we select? Oh, we always had two pickups on together on the triple master, didn't we? No. No, we didn't. No.
Would you like me to wait?
No thanks, no, I'm still on.
Yeah, three rockets switches.
Ah, 3 rocker switches, yes, that was it.
Oh,
That's right.
yes, of course.
Rico switches.
We used, no they were not, we went to Woolworths and we bought those
No, we
little
didn't.
Italian
We had those
switches.
in from Rico. The rocker switches you got.
Was that one for each pickup? It's a logical way of doing it.
Yeah. That's right. Yes. Yeah.
I tell you what we can give you, it won't do you any good, but we'll give you one that's the same sort of vibrato pickup, but as for use on an acoustic guitar. We used to make those by the hundreds. They were cast in aluminium and plated. Now we found the one firm in London who could plate on aluminium.
Yeah, I've had the same trouble with getting a Bixby plate.
Well, Bixby's never actually were plated. They were, I think they were under that, weren't they?
Mr. Weill, you say you've got other guitars than that. I mean, will you be willing to part with them? The likes of
Well, if you make it worthwhile, yes. Excuse me, if you make it worthwhile.
Because I'm, I am very, very interested. I've got really involved with guitars from that era. But the only British ones were worth bothering with.
Well, I was selling these about 3 or 4 years ago. We had them hanging up in the shop here, and we were selling them to young boys who wanted to buy a guitar at $27.50.
How long ago?
3 or 4 years ago. Until we decided one day that we were wasting valuable space in the shop down there and we should put them out of the way.
And what other instruments do you reckon you've got?
Somewhere we still have a Fibertone, it's called, Fiberglass guitar. There are 1 or 2 of those, which I'm sure you could probably sort of adjust yourself. They need the neck sort of setting correctly, and also, I know one we've got there is where the... I don't give him this. He'll get some second-hand Japanese guitars and stick that on
No, I
them.
wouldn't dare do that. I don't do that sort of thing.
Key pops as well.
Yeah, keep on as well. This is what I say, anything you want to get rid of.
Well, I'm still using that.
Ah,
I use that one, I use that on my hearing as well.
it's down, look at that.
We can probably find you 1 or 2 more of those. I know I've got some in the garage at
Brilliant.
Edinburgh.
This is great. Like,
If anything, all this setting out, that was made by our costume jewellery manufacturers, spin these off, don't they?
No. There is a firm in London who makes badges
Oh, I see.
called Markowitz. He's an awful bloke. He came into the shop one day and knocked over a string bass. Cost me £15 to get to repair it. He said, well, I wasn't there when it fell over. He touched it, and hung it up. Oh, he's a pain in the bloody neck. And any exhibition you go to, be it a motor show or be it anything else, he's always there. He always comes to you and says, he's Hungarian. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm due to be going back tomorrow lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the South Devon.
Back to South Devon. When could I see
I'll
that?
take you with me down to the store in Priory Road, in the old garage where we got some stuff.
You still got a store?
Yeah. There's not guitars in there, but there's, I think the machines are there. I'll tell you what's in the store. About 50 or 60 dual master bodies, unfinished, ready for spraying, mahogany, no necks, just the actual bodies.
Shame.
They're ready for spraying. I mean, they've been completely finished.
Who did you spray them?
Do you know, I can't remember, Ron might remember the man, it was in the city
Adams?
somewhere. No. It was, he was the only man in London at the time who knew how to spray polyester.
Derek Adams.
I don't think it was.
In Brick Lane.
Brick Lane rings a bell. They said off Great Eastern Street.
Off of?
Great Eastern. You know, where the old street and Great
Yes, it
Eastern.
runs parallel to...
Yeah.
That's
What's
it.
his name? Adams. Oh. I only know he was building a fiberglass boat in his basement,
That sounds like
and when he finished with it, he didn't know how to get it out.
That's
Well, he went bust.
Mad, but he's still doing polyester bodies.
I'm still doing ours.
Yeah,
Well-
Jeff Golder.
Sure.
He used to be.
Oh shit!
He used to be
yeah,
Remington
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
And I go in this.
Well, did Ike Isaacs tell you I made his first amplifier when he came to London?
He did mention
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. That's what he used it, didn't he?
Hmm?
It was for him to use, was it?
He was what?
He used it, didn't he? The one.
Yeah, that's right. We made him the first. In those days, we had a system where we made the amplifier more or less ready, and then we asked the customer to come into the workshop and sit down and play, and he would say, "I'd like a bit more top, I'd like a bit more bass, I'd like a bit more depths, and this and that." And we used to fiddle around with condensers and resistors until we had it exactly as he wanted, and then we finished it off, and they took it away. We did that with Ike's amplifier as well, you know. In fact, I did one for Roy Plummer, which was in the box of the corner amplifier, remember? He wanted a little amplifier that would give no more than 3 watts. Wait a minute, no, it wasn't Roy Plummer, it was Frank Denise. Yeah, he wanted an amplifier he could use just for playing in the studio and for practicing at home. We didn't have to carry his big stuff.
Full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another one. Oh, look at this.
Can we interrupt a minute?
Not room to get in.
How does Jerry get to Ron Howard?
Do you know where the Wormholt? You know where Wormholt Road is? The Wormholt Library.
No.
Well, it's not there anyway.
Well, telling me
It's called Ashbourne Road. Is it?
Give me the address.
Old Bourne Road. Yes. If you're going down Old Oak Road from the Brown Brothers corner, you know, Askew Road and Uxbridge Road.
Yeah.
You turn into Old Oak Road towards the Western Avenue roundabout.
Yeah.
And the first turning on the right is Old Bourne Road. ALD.
By the little Prairie shops.
Right?
By the little Prairie shops.
On the other side of the road. Yes.
Yeah. So you've got to go round the roundabout, come back to turn left.
Originally,
No, you don't go to the roundabout.
Not as far as the
You turn at the traffic light Uxbridge Road. You got Uxbridge Road east-west.
Yeah.
You got Askew Road south.
Yeah.
And you got Old Oak Road
North.
north. And the first turning on the right in Old Oak Road, running parallel with Uxbridge Road, is Old Bourne Road. Now, immediately opposite the little side street where you see a letterbox on the corner, just across there is number 20.
They go to a good home. Once they're there, they stay.
Well, you know, I got an advert coming out in the Exchange Mart next week, advertising my Humber Snipe estate. Must go to good home, hence only £275.
Heavier than what I've got. Because the paint's been stripped off the
That was
line.
still in the bag, you see, the paint's still there.
That one needs the neck pulling down a bit, yes.
I think so.
That's not just.
No, those fiberglass ones downstairs, haven't they?
Yeah, either downstairs. Yes, Sam.
I thought we could fiberglass.
I think we got 2 downstairs, unless at Emlyn Road. Can you spare some time to come back to Emlyn? The fiberglass ones, the round ones. But I want to show him the body.
Let me have a quick look in the cellar. I'm not feeling there's a fiberglass one in the cellar.
Yeah, should be.
No one wants to go and say, what's wrong with you?
I've just been down.
Well, we've got the monster that chained up down there. Is it?
No, she came back up here.
She nearly didn't.
He's on form today.
I
Was he always on form like that?
I thought I had the chance. I dropped the flat and turned the light off while she was down there. But unfortunately, Jerry heard her screaming.
Did you mention you had one of the old coffee faces?
Ron, there's an RP1B somewhere with the square corner, and there's one knocking around somewhere. We had it hanging on the wall at one time. The only one extant. If you can see that down there. I'm sure it must have been taken downstairs.
You didn't flog it?
No, we didn't flog it. I kept saying for years, I'm not selling it. It is so old that the neck and the body are made in one piece.
That's the one.
It's not a detachable neck.
With the the big heel.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you start, you have to do the whip to crack it.
My God, you have turned up trumps. You really have.
Hmm?
You have turned up trumps. You really have. Beyond my wildest imaginings, finding things left in that era.
Yeah.
It's virtually the start, isn't it?
And this whole idea of the detachable necks only came about when we started making them in any quantity. I mean, Jim at that time was only making them in one piece. Every neck was merged into the body.
You know,
Yes.
nice job, isn't it? Putting
Yeah.
it together.
Yeah.
Very nice dovetail idea.
Yeah, we found out yesterday they put them together with arrowdite. Then they used to glue them in with arrowdite and all things.
Well, yes, that's the only adhesive you can use for that sort of thing. I should think.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they use wood glue, I suppose, of sorts.
No, you can't use wood glues. Wood glues, I mean, any of these wood glues, they wouldn't hold it. Aldite, if it's properly used and properly applied, you can't beat aldite for anything.
They were made out of fiberglass.
Which one?
You were ahead of your time in those days. Observation making a fortune doing this.
I know. I should be a rich man, they always tell me that.
As long as you enjoyed it.
Well, yes, I suppose so. No, but what I must find for you to see is that body, which is the combination between wood and fiberglass, because I took that body with me one day to Frankfurt, and the president of the Rickenbacker company came on my stand, and he was there for 5 hours or 4 hours, something like that. And we were talking in terms, you know how the Rickenbacker guitars were then made? They took a solid piece of wood and they dug all the center out of it as much as they dared. I mean, it was all properly constructed so there was enough strength there to take the tension of the strings in the middle. But everything else was cut out, and then they put a belly on top. Yeah, that's right. But when I showed him that system, for which I got myself a provisional patent registered in Frankfurt before I showed it to him, we sat there for 4 or 5 hours. And we finally ended up talking in terms of that he would use that system to make Rickenbacker guitars under license from me, and we would get $1 for each guitar that they make. They were making about 500 a week in those days.
That was a good deal, yeah.
And in those days, the dollars were still worth, what was it? Yeah, I think it was $3.50 or something to the pound.
In the good old days.
Yeah. But I mean, it would have been a nice little sideline for me as an income without which I wouldn't have to do any hard work on, you know. $1 for each guitar they make, and they carry on making them, and I'm happy. And he was going to bring his technical director over to London immediately after the Frankfurt Fair, and he would explain to them how it is done, and it never came. Nothing ever came of it. And I must say, I've never had the nerve to follow it up. We were too busy doing other things, you know, we just didn't have time to do it. The thing is, you start business at Frankfurt with so many schemes and so many customers who say, I want this and I want to do that, and you couldn't possibly follow them all up, you know.
No, that's what they say. There's so many options suddenly become open to you, and so many
Yeah.
options put to you.
I mean, we wanted to make instruments and sell them, and make amplifiers and sell them, and we were very busy with that. The fact that somebody wanted to do something under license, I don't know.
Well, Mars writes built the same principle, but Sammy Mosley used to work for them.
Mostly.
Yeah, he used to work for Rickenbacker, he went on his own, built Mars writes in the same style with the 2 layer bodies and very thin section neck.
Yeah.
But coming back to Jim Burns, I mean, I've got research details required here, you know, personal history, etc. What is...
Yeah, we had the boxes flock sprayed, and then put a label on top and instruction sheet put inside it.
So these 2 here and this one, and possibly the base, are the only ones you've got left now?
I think so. Well, there may be 1 or 2 half-finished ones in the garage.
Base wasn't downstairs.
I couldn't see it down
Probably so.
you sure you didn't sell it? Because we had that hanging up on the wall, and then we had that Hawk guitar.
I know that I steadfastly refused to part with it purely from, sentimental reasons.
Maybe put it in
Sentimental, you say, or sentimental?
Sentimental. We're square now.
Yeah, appreciate it. In the attic. That's the basement, isn't it?
Where is the attic? It's upstairs as well.
the oh, not here.
Not here, no. It's an attic at Emden Road. Any objection to my taking them into the garage at Emden Road?
If they couldn't get in.
Because I shall need help to shift a few things if we want to find
Don't
something.
remember my face, that's all I can say.
Well, your face looks a hell of a lot cleaner than anything else over there, so what are you worrying about? Apart from anything else, I must eat something. Well, if you want to talk to me this afternoon, I must eat something, otherwise you'll find me in bed, out on my back.
What gender do you want to do?
On the other side of the library.
When are you setting out for home tomorrow?
Saturday lunchtime.
Now, we better finish today. I haven't got much on today anyway, have I? I've got nothing on today. Betty, will you remind me, please? I made an appointment with that garage in Hounslow to go in for that service on the distributor on Monday morning.
We've got a couple more appointments on the
Do you want to make a phone call before we go? Or do you want to wait till we get over and see what we can find there? That thing there, digressing for a moment. Now, we made this vibrato tailpiece. This is big crystal tailpiece, sort of pickup unit, the VP1 I told you about, right? And they were selling like hot dogs, and they cost a bloody fortune to buy. And I hit on the idea to try take a headphone, and the headphone, it was an ex-government type of headphone, and by putting a piece of chamois leather between the diaphragm and the magnets on the headphone, I used to be able to dampen its response sufficiently to act exactly the same way as that big crystal mic. And that was then, what do we call that thing? The bass contact mic, wasn't it? Yeah. So we had a bass contact mic, and then we gradually replaced that big bass contact mic with this one. And that one we sold literally hundreds and hundreds. I think we must have sold well over 1,000, because I bought that tin that you see there is a typewriter ribbon tin, which I had the lid punched out to get a ring. The ring was then chromium plated, and the tin was then sprayed. And we sold loads of these. Where the rivet is in the back, there was a lavatory seat rubber washer thing. You know, the thing that's just when you...
Very exotic.
Nadia, I was...
When there was a world shortage of maracas, do you remember?
Oh yes, that was marvellous.
Talking of that, Richard, see, I read that one music shop.
Down there.
They're talking about it. I read that one music shop. And they said, we got an old Fenton Weill here. He said, it isn't for sale, it's sort of belongs to a shop. It looks like a lavatory seat. I assume.
Let him sit down on this, you'll soon tell the difference.
I visualised a lavatory seat with a neck on it. Did you ever make a guitar out of all those sentences?
Who did that? There was an Italian guitar.
That shop the other day.
Hello? Yes?
No, you saw it drawing.
Yes.
I never know.
Well, what are we going to do about these things? How far have we got so far?
Well,
Yes.
let's take this as a... What have we got here?
I shall be able to...
You got the two dual masters. Yeah.
What time can you make it?
I shall probably find you a lot more machine heads, I know. And where are they set in the garage?
If he's following up on his calls and lectures earlier,
So in fact you've got 3 guitars here that are any good talking about. Well, what sort of price did you have in mind? Well, I told you I was selling them 3 years ago for £27.50. I'm telling him what I sold them 3 years ago for. Don't worry, I'm going to charge him more. Don't get upset.
If he could make it between 11 and 1 on Tuesday morning, yes, that would be great.
I tell you something, Betty. If I were to clean up any one of these 2 dual masters and put an advert in the Melody Maker, I'd get 40 quid. But we've had write-ups nowadays in the Melody Maker. People wanting to buy Fenton Weill Guitars and well, yes, if they buy them, they buy rubbish. That's true.
Don't say that.
Okay. So if